He's in San Antonio. Yes, he's in San Antonio for the National Association of Real Estate Brokers conference. Ms. Dion Collier, the head of agent development and mentorship, will be taking over training today for our contracts training. So Dion, we definitely thank you for stepping in for this, and we just take it away from here so we can learn about contracts.
All right. Thank you, Jess, for the introduction.
My pleasure.
I hope everybody's having a great Wednesday. And y'all can, turn on your cameras if you like, and comment in the chat if you have questions. I'm gonna go through a few topics today. One is where to find the contracts digitally or electronically, and also how to complete a few of the contracts and how to get your offer accepted. So I'll give some tips and some tools that I use, and then you can just let me know if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to answer them or explain more in detail. All right, perfect. So I'm going to share my screen, and let's see.
You have hosting capabilities, Dion?
Yeah, I believe. Can y'all see my screen now?
Yeah.
Yes, we see it.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about what I just stated. And I'm going to try and type the places in the chat, or if someone can, if they're able to. If not, I'll just email it to everybody after it's over. All right. One location is Zip Form Plus. We all have access as agents, as members of HAR, NAR, TAR. We have access to Zip Form Plus, and it's free to us to use. And just set up your login information. And so the first one is Zip Forms Plus. Here's a test folder. And there's a section here called All Forms. And you select All or Track or TAR or TAR to find the document that you're looking for. But most common is the Track Forms. And if you type in like 1 to 4, it will come up. You select it, close out the box, and the 1 to 4 will be in the folder. So you can add all forms to here. Say you're looking for the third-party financing addendum. It says add it. And another common one would be the association. Addendum for property subject to a mandatory owners association or properties association, POR. So here are the 3 main forms that we use when we're submitting offers: the 1 to 4, the third party, and the addendum for mandatory and HOA. Again, each house it will vary depending on what you may need. Some may need the MUD, and I'll go in that more in detail. So right now I'm just going through all the different places that you can find the forms that you need. So this first one was Zip Forms Plus. Next, some people do have access to Dotloop, some do not. But Dotloop is another feature of HAR. Let me go to HAR. In HAR, if you go to your homepage, you have different sites that we have, such as Transaction Desk and Dotloop. They are also, can everybody see my screen? I want to make sure. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. You can also see forms in Transaction Desk and in Dotloop. Most common, I do use Dotloop. I have used Zip Forms Plus in the past. Just for now, I do use Dotloop quite a bit, but I've also used Transaction Desk. So I'm going to go ahead and click on, well, Dotloop is already open. And if I was going to create a new loop, I'm going to use an example property today, 14806 Ashford Springs. So the dot loop will be connected to the MLS. You just have to sign in your information, put in that you're a part of the Houston Association of Realtors, and when you open up a transaction, you start typing in the address, it'll autofill for you. So next I'm going to click continue. Sometimes I'll add a photo. All right. So then you would go to templates to start adding the documents that you need. This is the track text to realtors interactive documents. This is the check forms. Type in 1 to 4. Copy it to your loop. And now you have the 1 to 4 inside of your folder. And then you would do the same. Sometimes you can create a folder. Let's see, my finance buyer offer folder, and it has all the forms already in here. So you can create your own template and it will include the documents that you need. All right, and I'm gonna come back to this. So far I did zip forms, Dotloop. Another way is to go to HAR tools, MLS tools, and you can go to Forms Manager. And that's the screen that I'm on now. These are some of the most, like my save forms that I use most often. And you can search 1 to 4. You can also click most downloaded forms. Residential lease application, residential lease, social disclosure notice, the single family. And this is where you can get when you're inputting a listing, the single family input data sheet. But I can go on more about that in another training. And click on track forms. And here, the 1 to 4 is the very first contract. So you can save it, you can download it. You can download it, print it, save it to your computer. Now, through Forms Manager, it's not where you can fill in the document. It's just only where you can get the hard copy of the document or save it to your computer. The next location will be Transaction Desk. I go to Tools, Third-Party Tools. Anybody have any questions so far? Right now, I'm just like self-explanatory.
And you guys, if at any point you do have any questions, feel free to unmute or either put them in the chat. We will be monitoring them. All right, so in Transaction Desk, we have create a transaction. I'm just gonna name it 14806 Ashford. It's a residential buyer side, RMLS. 9605985.
selling agent, and create. All right, so it auto-filled, it brought up, it already brought up the picture of the home. It auto-filled the known fields. And then we can start adding documents. Again, the different selections, the hard documents, the track documents, and the TAR documents. One to four. Transaction desk, I'm not sure, does y'all transaction desk run this low? Is it my computer? I'm not sure. I don't use transaction desks just that often, but I have used it in the past. So it did autofill the known information, and then you can go back and fill in the information that's missing. So those are the three areas: is zip forms, dot loop, HAR forms manager, and transaction desk. I believe those are the 4 places that we can get our electronic documents from.
Perfect.
Yeah, Jess, do you know any others?
No, though you covered them, you know, it's really on preference. I use the forms is really mainly what it is that I use. So any questions from you all that are on, or do you all have a particular program or software you like to use? Drop it in the chat. All right, good.
All right. So I'm gonna do an example 1 to 4 contract, filling it out, and where I get the information from to fill it out. I'm just gonna use dot loop for this particular example. All right, so the first thing I do is when I'm putting in the offer, I go to the matrix and see if there's any attachments. So for this particular property, they've included the offer instructions, the seller's disclosure, the HOA addendum, mud notice, flood hazard notice, and the home warranty information. So this agent actually, you know, included all these attachments. Not all listing agents do this, but this is convenient when they do already have those things attached. So what I would do is download the seller's disclosure and send that to my clients for them to review and sign. Offer instructions. And offer instructions, sometimes they put what the seller prefers. You can always tell your client they're not obligated to put exactly what they prefer, but if they want their offer accepted or a higher chance of their offer being accepted, then you do what the seller prefers. It always can be tweaked, it always can be changed, it's always negotiable, but this is a preference that the listing agent requires. So this is the information that I'm going to fill in on the contract. And it just goes in detail about all the additional documents that are included with the offer. But say, for instance, that they didn't give the seller's name. Then I would go to the listing, go to the realtors. Sometimes I use realtors tax. And I get the owner's information from here. Lot number, subdivision information. If it's in a MUD, that information is found here, and it's in MUD 6. Click on it. MUD 96, and then this is the information I would use to fill out the MUD document. But I believe they included it. So the MUD notice will be here. It's already filled out. And then you would have your buyer sign here. So I would download it. Go back to my .loop folder. And I would add it. The seller's disclosure and the MUD notice to my folder. Sometimes there's an error and you just got to refresh your page. I'll do that later. So in .loop you have details. Also in zip forms you have details as transaction, where you can put the party's information. If it's a tenant, seller, selling agent, you select what party you're adding to the folder. So this one, I believe her name was Judy. And I'm gonna speed up. I'm just trying to go step by step for those that may have never, filled out an application before. Judy Thompson. And it doesn't have to be all caps. Mine is just all caps. Seller. I'm adding her to the transaction. And let's just say I'm the buyer. And you can add the purchase price. It's $425. Say I'm offering $430. Here, the location of the property. As far as the legal description, you have the lot number, the section, and the subdivision. And so I see it's lot 1, block 2, Fall Creek, section 14. Lot 1, block 2, section 14. And I'm just saving it to the loop. So through .loop, it should autofill the information. They have me as the buyer, Judy Thompson as the seller, the listing agent, and then you can also put yourself as the buying agent. And you can fill in the, additional information as far as title company. Earnest money, if I think they requested 1%. All right. 1% earnest money and $300 option fee and a 10-day option period. So 1% is 4,300. And let's say we're going to close 30 days from now. 4. And I'm going to hit autofill. All right, so it auto-filled most of the sections. It may not do all. It did leave the addition blank. So I'm going to fill that in. Lot 1, Block 2, Fall Creek, Section 14. So just make sure that you have the seller, all sellers. If it's more than one seller, then all the sellers' names will go here, and all the buyers' name will go here. And always double check with your client to make sure that you did spell their names correctly. So number 1 is parties. Number 2 is the property, which includes anything that is attached to the property is included unless it is mentioned in exclusions. So to find out if something is mentioned in exclusions, sometimes the agent would put here what is not, what's been excluded from the property, and then sometimes it's in attachments. Don't see it. It's important when you do walk through the home. That'll be another training. Important things to walk through the home and just to notice what's attached to the wall and what's not. Some TV wall mounts, they're attached to the wall. They stay with the home unless it's stated as an exclusion. The same thing goes for blinds and curtain rods. If they're attached to the wall, then they stay with the home. One situation where the vanity in the powder room, it was kind of like it looked like a piece of furniture. It was, I guess, pushed up against the wall, but it wasn't attached to the wall. And so the sellers were taking that bottom portion of the vanity with them. They were selling it for $300 if my clients want to keep it, but it's important to notice what things are attached to a wall and what are not, what is not. Also, same thing goes for sometimes fireplaces. Sometimes they have these push-in fireplaces that are not attached to the home. They're just filled into the box, and then they're taking that fireplace with them. So it's very important when you do the walkthrough and before you put an offer to find out what's attached to the home, or you have to provide a non-realty addendum to your offer saying what you want to stay with the home and if there's going to be a price for it. So if the seller was keeping anything, it would go here in exclusions. Things that, as far as accessories, such as garage remotes, it says artificial fireplace logs, security systems, anything that is currently with the home, the swimming pool equipment, it is automatically included unless it's stated in exclusions that they will be taking it with them. All right, so the cash portion, the current FHA, if it was FHA, what's the FHA loan limit? I think it's 420. Yeah, 426.80 is a loan limit for the Harris County area. So say we're going to go conventional and put 10% down. And you gotta select third-party financing addendum. So 10% down. So going conventional, depending on the lender, you know, you can go put between 5% to 20% down. That number can vary. But just for this example, I'm using 10% down, 43,000. The loan amount will be subtracted from the 430 offer price, and the loan amount is 387,000. This is if there was leases to the property. Sometimes the solar panels are leased, propane tanks, water softener, security system. So it's also good. The listing agent should disclose if there are any current active leases on the property. And if so, then this will be checked. All right, earnest money. So I'm going back to the agent's offer instructions, which is tradition title. Maria Worth. And things might not be spelled correctly, but it's just an example. I love to copy and paste just to eliminate the errors or typos. Sometimes the additional earnest money is required, but in this case, it is not. So either I put 0 or I put not applicable. I don't like to leave empty blanks. And the option period is for 10 days. So in section B of number 5, earnest money and termination option, B termination option is an option period. That's where that option fee of $300 is given for 10 days. And it's effective or ends on the 10th day at 5 p.m. And so you always count the dates like this. So we went under contract today, got anytime today before midnight. Say we signed the contract at 11 p.m. tonight and had a 10-day option period. Tomorrow, March the 3rd at 5 p.m., that would mark day 1. So they'd be like day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7, day 8, day 9, day 10. So day 10 would be Saturday at 5 p.m., the end of the option period. Option period sometimes is shortened to get your offer accepted. Sometimes like you may do a 5-day option period, a 10-day. Back in the day, they used to be 10 to 14 days, but due to the competitive market that we have, some people shorten their option period to get their offer accepted, and they increase the option fee amount. Just let your buyers know that if they decide not to buy the house during the option period, that the seller does keep that option fee money. But it is credited back to the buyer at closing. Sometimes if you do a shorter termination option period, then make sure that you have an inspector on standby sometime before you even sign. Like if you have a verbal acceptance of the offer and you're waiting on signatures, and you should go ahead and schedule that inspector to come out that day or the next day just to get that report back quicker. It's never good pressure to wait till day 8, day 9 to get the inspection. You want to have time to negotiate repairs or get money in lieu of repairs, or also just decide if your clients want to proceed forward with the house. Sometimes it takes time to get quotes on like roof repair, plumbing. So you need those days to negotiate. Any questions so far? Oh, also very important. Within 3 days of the effective date. So if we went under contract today, the 3rd, the earnest money and the option fee is due within 3 days, not 3 business days, just 3 days, period. So that would be day 1, day 2, day 3. And it does fall on the weekend, which a lot of title companies are closed on the weekends. So I would just tell my clients to get in, by Friday. And it does say if the last day to deliver the earnest money option fee or the additional earnest money falls on a Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday, the time to deliver the earnest money option fee or the additional earnest money is applicable. It is extended until the end of the next day that is not a Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday. So technically they have until Monday at 5 p.m. if the option, the earnest and option fee day ends on a Saturday, falls on a Saturday. But sometimes I don't like risking it, so I'll say that Friday. But the sooner the better. So if your clients also do not want to proceed forward during the option period, so before that 10th day at 5 p.m., a termination needs to be sent over. It's not just verbally saying, hey, we're not moving forward, or an email. You actually have to send the termination and then the release, buyer's right to terminate addendum, and also the release of earnest money, so they get their earnest money back. All right. So if the seller is paying for the title policy, their preferred title company is Tradition Title. Now, sometimes the seller could pay for the owner's title policy, or you can offer to make your offer more competitive. A stronger offer is the buyer will pay for the earnest money, your client. So you put traditional title company information here, and you select seller will pay for it, or buyer, or if you select both, then you will split the cost. And if my clients ask me, well, how much is the owner's title policy? I go to my Fidelity Agent One app. And it may be a quicker way. So determine if you do know a quick way, let me know. So I go to the seller. Let me just say conventional. House is 430. All right, the detailed closing cost, owner's title policy is $25.71. So I'll tell my client, or if you want your offer, accept the offer to pay the owner's title policy, this is the amount of money that will be added to your closing costs, $2,571. Or if they're splitting it half and half, then I'll just divide that by 2 and tell them that this is your portion, just to give them an idea of what that owner's title policy is going to cost. Moving on to the standard printed exception as a discrepancy. This is in regards to the survey. Any conflicts, shortages in area or boundary lines, encroachments, or protrusions, or overlapping improvements. This is like added insurance that covers a survey in case there are encroachments or conflicts in the survey. In a standard survey, and like say, sometimes in most standard subdivisions, There's a defined line as far as where the fence ends and where it starts, like deciding who owns what property. But I've seen it where surveys are wrong. And this is a chance where you can have the shortages amended at the expense of the buyer or the seller. So sometimes when I'm dealing with acreage, or it just depends on and it's a preference. I'll have my buyers, hey, I want you to go ahead and get that added protection if there are shortages in the area. And I'll put at the expense of the buyer, but sometimes you can select the seller. And I've talked to the title companies, and it's a percentage, but I think the last one I had was like an extra $70 for the coverage added to the owner's title policy. All right, moving on, the survey. Sometimes they say the survey is included. Let's see what they said. Survey is not available, and it's at buyer's expense. Now I put in offers where I put it's at the seller's expense, and if the offer was good enough, they still accepted it. But if they're in this competitive market, I will put it at buyer's expense and let my client know, it's going to cost about $500 on average, or $550, $600 for the survey, depending on the size of the lot. Is everybody still there? Anybody have any questions so far?
You're doing well, Dion. Very thorough.
Okay.
No questions. Thank you, Dion.
All right, thank you. All right, next is the survey. They do not have it. So to make my offer competitive, I will put buyer will pay for survey. And I'll just sometimes say, if we're closing in 30 days, I'll just say like 27 days. Because I don't want to say 5 days or 3 days, because if the option period, we decide not to go forward with it, and then the title company has already ordered the survey, then that's, what's the use of paying for a survey that you're not going to buy the house? So I was trying to get it as close to, but then not necessarily 27 days, because sometimes the lender want to see it, and that'll be too close to the 3-day rule for closing. So that might push the closing back. So let's just say 25, within 25 days or 20 days, 21 days. After the effective contract, then a new survey will be ordered, and the title company will order it on behalf of the buyer, and it'll be added to the buyer's closing costs. But now if the seller did have a survey or haven't provided one, then sometimes I pay within 3 days after the effective contract, seller shall furnish the buyer and title company the seller's existing survey of the property and the T-47. So the T-47 is it states, if anything has been done to the property since buying it. Ooh, one moment. Shay, are you there? Or Jess?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, I have to pause for a moment.
Okay.
One second.
All right, guys, we're just gonna give Dion a moment here. Take a quick break until she returns. Again, feel free, guys, to leave any questions for Dion in the chat. So when she comes back, we can get those addressed as well.
Jessica, I'm gonna take a restroom break.
That sounds good. You all take a quick break.
All right, I'm back. I'm back.
All right, perfect.
All right. So I was talking about the T47. This will let somebody know if, since the person purchased the property, if they done any changes to like the boundary or let's see. Construction projects such as new structures, additional buildings, rooms, garages, swimming pools, or other permanent improvements or fixtures to the home, changes in the location of the boundary fences or boundary walls, construction projects on immediately adjoining properties, which encroach on the property, and then the conveyances, replats, easement grants, all that. So if they've done nothing to the property since purchase pertaining to A, B, C, and D, then they will put none here. If they did do something, they will explain there what they did and then sign and it'll be notarized. So the survey, the lender, in most cases, if it's a cash deal, sometimes, the survey may or may not be needed, but in most finance deals, almost all, finance deal, they want a copy of the survey. And if there has been, like, say a patio was added or a room or something was done or fence line was moved, then a new survey is needed to reflect the changes before the sale of the property. All right, so I just put 21 days. Sometimes people back in the day used to put residential use, but of course this is a residential contract, so you don't have to put residential use. Any objections, buyer may object in writing to defects, exceptions, or encumbrances to the title disclosed on the survey, other than the items on 6A through 7 above. So once you get the survey back and say it's something that you didn't like, say the fence line is protruding. I've had it where, by 4 feet on one side of the house, the neighbor's fence was encroaching their property by 4 feet. And so since they had that added insurance, they could dispute, they can go to court and win that the neighbor needs to move their fence or the seller needs to have the fence moved prior to closing. And sometimes I put, 7 days here. Sometimes I put 5, sometimes I put 3, depending on, how normally within a certain amount of days, it's our job as agents to make sure that when we get that information from the title company about the Schedule C of the commitment, the Schedule B and C, the survey, that we review it with our clients. And if there's are any concerns, that we address them immediately. But this is just saying that after you receive the information back to you, then you have a certain amount of days to not proceed forward with, you may object to it and not proceed. You can get out of the contract if you don't agree with the findings, if there's defects, So let's just say 5 days. Here is if the property is if the property is a part of a owner's association, then you select yes, it is. Some properties are not, so you just put no, and then you wouldn't need that that document. You would need the HOA if the house is not in a HOA community. So scrolling down. So disclosure notice, property condition B, the seller has received the notice, and that's what was attached here. And so just make sure that your buyer signs and reviews so they know what, the age of also sometimes sellers will leave this blank, the roof type And I always send it back to the listing agent and say, make sure you fill out the age of the type of roof and the age. The seller's disclosure will also disclose if there's any known defects, if it's in a flood, if it's ever flooded, if it's in a flood plain, and if they currently have flood insurance coverage. So sometimes if your buyer's buying this house, you can go ahead and say, hey, who are you using for a flood insurance company? So it can just transfer to your buyers. You don't have to go search for another one. But always compare. Then if they ever filed a claim, HOA, I know this isn't part of the learning today, but I just want to show details that relate to the contract.
That's good.
Thanks. Section 9, so seller has or has not attached a survey. And again, she had said that they have not. Since they did have an inspection in 2020, I'm not sure when they bought it. Let's see. Sometimes I go to 360 history. Well, not all, sometimes, all the time. So I want to know, oh, so they bought it in 2020. So that's why, so the inspection that they have is the inspection they have probably when they purchased the property. The 20, they've only been in about a year. And then it shows the loan amount. So she put, let's see, what'd she buy it for? Ooh, in 2020, bought it for $314 and now selling it for $100K more. All right. That's a good investment. All right. Back to sales disclosure. So buyer has received the notice. So I would select here if they haven't received it, or it's not attached like this property had attached documents, then I would just put within 3 days. Normally I put within 3 days. Please give us a seller's disclosure. But if my option period is short, like only 5 days, then I'm probably gonna need that within like 1 day or 2 day. And then in some cases, the seller is not required to furnish the seller's disclosure. That's mainly for like foreclosed home banks. Yeah, REOs. D, acceptance of property condition. Either you accept the property as is, and this is not including what may, it doesn't defeat the purpose that you can terminate during the option period. It's just saying going in, there's nothing that you want to address. Sometimes people can go in and be like, oh, or the seller may say, hey, I know you see the holes in the game room area, and that will be repaired prior to closing, or something like that. So if it's something that they've already mentioned that they were going to repair, or you've seen which are like, hey, I'm not buying this house unless this is fixed, then you can put it here. And buyer accepts the property as is, provided that the seller does the following specific repairs or treatments. You can say, oh, the landscaping or whatever. It just, but in a multiple offer situation, I would just say as is if it's not a deal breaker. If it's a deal breaker, yes, put it here. But if it's not a deal breaker, put that you're buying the property as is. Residential service contract, that's pretty much the home warranty. And I believe she included it for their part of it. Yeah. So they receive compensation for marketing these specific home warranty companies. They have access to advertising, marketing, and education. And then, that's a whole nother type, the different home warranties. I'm not gonna, send a different list, but home warranties range right now, shoot, they probably started like $600. Back in the day, I think I used to put like $300.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Yeah, I mean back like a long time ago back.
Okay.
But they ain't $300 no more. So they more
Not
like
at all.
500 on up. And then they gotta add, they have all these additions. So now some home warranties, you know, they all the way up to like $800 after you add a washer, dryer, refrigerator, all of the things that you want covered annually. They like set, you know, between I would just say $500 to $800. And I wouldn't put this if it's a multiple offer situation. I would just put $0 or not applicable. But if, you know, if we're back into a buyer's market, I'm be like, yeah, they're gonna pay, the seller's gonna pay $600, up to $600 for a home warranty. If the home warranty costs $550, then the seller's gonna pay up to $600. So if it's $550 for the home warranty, then the buyer does not get the other $50. In the past, I had buyers say, hey, well, I'm gonna get, you know, they're paying $600. My home warranty is $550. Where my other $50 at? No, it's up to. So I always tell my clients to add something. And then sometimes some listings already come with the home warranty. So it's kind of like I forgot what it's called. It's like a listing home warranty. And then if you want to continue, you can still use their home warranty after closing.
Okay.
And yeah. But to make our offer competitive, I'm not gonna say, I'll be like, yeah, $0. Like, is this a deal breaker? This $600 for this home warranty, or are you gonna pay for it? So, all right. So, Brooke, this is what you disclose if you're related to a person, the buyer, the seller, or have interest in the property. Then you disclose that information, so you won't be sued later on for non-disclosure. Put the close date here. On average, some houses close, you know, between 30 and 45 days. But again, this date is negotiable. Let's see if she put preferred close date. Nope, she didn't. Sometimes I'll call the listing agent and be like, hey, do they have a preferred, you know, close date? Do they need a lease back? Anything I can do to make my offer more competitive. I don't see nothing. Next, buyer possession. Seller shall deliver to buyer possession of the property in its present or required condition, ordinary wear and tear, accepted upon closing and funding, or according to a temporary residential lease. Now, in most cases, you know, if a temporary lease is not needed, then the buyer is going to take possession upon closing and funding. I have to be very clear with your clients, with the buyers, that they can't necessarily feel that on the close date, say the close date is going to be April 4th, and they got movers scheduled on April 4th to come and move their things in there. If for some reason, or, you know, if the title company says we can't get them in till 3 p.m. on the 4th, then there's a chance that property will not fund the same day. So they cannot take possession until it's closed and funded, not just closed, but funded as well. So come, you know, April 5th, the following day in the morning, the title company like, hey, we're, you know, it's totally funded, and now they can get the keys. Now the keys are being released. So I always tell my clients, don't try to have movers on the day of closing, because you never know what may happen. Closing may be pushed back, and funding may not happen on the day of closing. But you know, sometimes you can work it out and negotiate a 1-day lease or 2-day lease. But I always tell them, do not schedule movers on the day of closing.
Okay.
All right. Next, according to a temporary residential lease form. So sometimes a seller needs to stay in the house for a couple of days or weeks or even months. I think the max is 90 days after closing. I don't think it's 120. I think it's 90 days. Yeah, I think it's 90. That they can have a lease back, a seller lease back. So you close, though your buyer's closing the house, is theirs. However, the seller is going to stay in there for another like 5 days or 7 days, while sometimes they're using the funds from the sale of the house to buy another house, or they just use it to move to wherever they need to move to, or for whatever reason. So sometimes sellers do need a seller lease back.
Have you run into that often at all, Dion?
Yeah, I just ran into it in December.
Gotcha.
The clients were buying new construction, and
Okay.
they wanted a seller lease back, but actually, during the option period, they said that they didn't need the seller lease back anymore because the seller lease back was going to be, I know it was going to be all the way through Christmas. And my clients was like, dang, they want to be in there before Christmas, but the seller lease back was going to be like around New Year's Eve. But they just decided to do a short-term rental. I think they moved into like an Airbnb and put their
Gotcha.
stuff in storage instead of doing the seller lease back. So my clients were in there before Christmas.
Okay.
Or sometimes it's not that often, but sometimes there's a buyer temporary residential lease where some sellers feel like the buyer is a strong buyer and they'll let them move into the house prior to closing on it.
Wow.
So if they're already moved out, you can do a buyer's temporary residential lease. And if that was the case, then you would put according to the temporary residential lease here. Smart devices, that's just stating that sometimes, people have smart cameras and they have to remove all access. Once you sell the house, the seller's personal devices needs to be terminated. That's just, you don't want the seller looking at, because sellers have been sued
Personal
for
stuff. Mm-hmm.
still having access to the cameras and alarms and security codes. So special provisions, you will put any special provisions relating to the sale of the property. But again, we're not attorneys, but we can only insert only factual statements and business details. But in most cases, there's an addendum. So if there's an addendum for what you're trying to put in special provisions, then they suggest don't put it in special provisions, just use the addendum. All right, number 12, settlement and other expenses. The following expenses must be paid at or prior to closing. So this is basically if you're asking for the seller to pay some of the buyer's closing costs. If back in the buyer's market, then I'll be like, yeah, I want the seller to pay $6,000 of my client's closing costs. But in this market, it is zero. Just unless we're raising up the price of the house. Say the house is $430. I was listed at $425 and I'm offering $430 and I want $5,000 in closing costs. The purpose of that is the seller will get the same. If you're offering $430,000 or versus $425, $430,000 with $5,000 back to the buyer as far as closing cost contribution, or just $425K, that would be pretty much the same offer for the seller. However, it also needs to meet appraisal value. So it does need to make $430, but say it does make $430. The difference with that is that the buyer brings less money to closing, and their loan amount would just be about $5,000 higher. But sometimes that doesn't make a difference to the buyer. They're like, I'd rather less money at closing and I'll pay the difference of the $5,000 added to my loan amount, which in most cases ain't that much, probably like $5 or something, $10 or something, if that. And so they were like, well, instead of me coming with $5,000 more at closing, I'd rather just up the sales price $5,000 and have a higher, loan amount of $5,000. But again, that's just an example. But to make my offer more competitive, I'm not asking for any contribution. Moving down. All right, so then, you will put your buyer's name here, their email address. Sometimes I don't put the phone number because I don't really want them having my client's phone number, but I will put the email. Next, the addendums that are attached to this contract is the third-party financing addendum, the addendum for property subject to POAs. There's also she also had flood. What is she have? Water district notice, also known as the MUD. HOA disclosure. Oh, information about special flood hazard areas. But I don't think, oh, and here's a way to figure out if it's in a flood map. So it's in the 500-year floodplain. So insurance is required, flood insurance. And so that addendum would need to be added. Missing it. Also, this is where if the buyer was doing a temporary residential lease, you would check that box. If it was a seller's temporary residential lease, you would check that box. If the house is built before 1978, on or before 1978, then a lead-based paint addendum would be required. So this is so
Not seeing
I'll
it.
put, huh?
You know what I'm saying? I'm not seeing it. You have to do other.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have to put special flood. So then I would just, any addendum that's not listed here or any document that's not listed here, then I would type it in. And I may not be saying the right wording, but y'all get that in. Special flood hazard addendum. I guess I can bring it up. I'm almost done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just make sure that after if the seller signed first and your buyer signed last, then make sure that you do execute the contract. A lot of people a lot of agents may forget to fill in the executed date. And if it's not filled in, then the contract isn't, what word am I looking for? Active, valid, so to speak. It has to be executed. Make sure that the broker information is all filled out. Make sure that you do fill in the seller agent information completely. Don't leave it blank. This is where you put, if they're paying 3%. Very important, you do want to get paid. So don't forget that spot there. And then if I go to the listing, buyer agent is 3%. Now, sometimes they say 2.5% and in a buyer's market, and they say 2. I still be putting 3% sometimes, but they'll come back like, don't forget that you need to change it to 2.5. But hey, it's a try. I'll be pushing the button. What else I was gonna say about this? No, that's it. All right. Yeah, just make sure that all the information is filled in. If there's a phone number missing, the license number of the Keller Williams, sometimes she'll have it on that page. Oh, yeah, so she has it here. It's all listed, so I will just copy and paste. Keller Williams Royal. It's less things for the listing agent to do.
In the event that they don't have that on the instructions, can you show them how they can access the license number of the agent?
Yeah. So here's where you click on Keller Williams and you see the broker's license number. To the 900-862. All right. So this is the Keller Williams broker license number. And the agent, click on the agent's name, and there go the agent's check number. And phone number. And the phone numbers and the address. Yeah, normally I'll just click on the listing broker information and the listing agent information to fill in these spots. Then make sure all of your information is here. Make sure your name, Brooks and Davis license number, that you are representing the buyer and only as the buyer's agent, and the seller only as the seller's agent. All right, make sure your fee, that 3% is in there. Oh, sometimes if it says like bonus to the seller, or, you know, they'll say they're paying 4% commission, then you put 4% there. And this is for the title company to fill out once they receive the option and the earnings. And then you'll get emailed a copy receipt. Also, make sure to tell your clients, the buyers, when they do, if they go deliver the option fee and earnest to the title company, to ask them to give them a copy of the, you know, a receipt, just saying that it was delivered before they leave. All right. Oh, any questions on the 1 to 4?
No questions so far. You have been very thorough.
Very good.
Awesome. Oh, there's some questions in the chat. Oh, no. Okay.
I don't see any. I had to get on my computer, but I don't think that there were any questions in the chat other than if it was going to be recorded. So it will be recorded, guys, so you can always reference this.
So seller's disclosure. So since I had to upload the seller's disclosure, it's not gonna auto fill where the signature goes. So you have to, you know, add, you know, each person, each page, make sure you do all the initials. And that's just how I'm doing it through dot loop. You do the same way through zip forms. You add to sign, transaction desk. Those are just all the different ways. And then you would save and share, and then they'll send off to your client. I'm just doing an example. So it'll show how many fields I need to sign, can sign. Sometimes I'll attach the PDF to the email so they can review it as well. And I was like, please sign, you know, SD, seller disclosure at your earliest convenience. And then share it. So we have the 1 to 4. Now we're going to do the 3 to 4. I mean, not 3 to 4, the third party financing addendum. And it has the buyer and the seller, the property address, autofill. All right, I'm doing conventional. Now I was putting 10% down. The loan amount, I believe, was $387. Due in 30 years. I'm not doing a 15 years. Some people do 15 years. I'm doing 30 years. With the interest not to exceed, interest rates have gone up. Let's just say 4.25. And it's 30 years. I'm not doing a like variable rate for the first 5 years, or and you know, 25 years. I'm just doing a traditional conventional loan, and that's for 30 years of the loan with origination charge as shown by the buyer's loan estimate. So your buyer should definitely get a loan estimate from their lender. And I normally just put 2% of the loan. It shouldn't be different. Some people put 1%. That loan estimate could differ if like say the interest rate wasn't locked in, and not interest rate. Their origination charges changed because maybe they wanted to buy down the rate. This is different ways, but normally I just ask the lender. I'd be like, hey, you know, can you send them a buyer's loan estimate? And normally it shouldn't differ. It shouldn't exceed 2% of the loan. If somebody says anything different, you know, please let me know. I had a listing agent say, can I put 1%? I'm not sure why, but yeah. And if there was a second mortgage loan, you would put that information there. So I would just get that information. I normally get the interest rate from the pre-approval letter sent over from the lender. That's how I get my numbers, or I just email the lender and like, hey, what are the terms of this contract? I mean, their pre-approval. Let me know what their interest rate is and loan amount. because they sometimes may be putting more down, they may be putting 15% down, 20%, 50, who knows? So I always ask the lender for that information. If they were doing FHA, then it'll be a 203B. It'll be a 203K if it was a rehab loan, but it's 203B FHA. And then you would put the amount that they're financing, the loan amount. It's the sales price minus the down payment gives you the loan amount. If they're in 30 years, their interest rate, 30 years, and I put 2%. If I can give an example. So let's just say 260,000. And they got a 4.5%, 30 years, 30 years. Not to exceed 2% of the loan. So that's what it looked like if it was FHA. Any questions? Yeah, so this is a conventional offer. All right, so yeah, I'll get to that at the bottom. So approval financing. So most time, your clients have a pre-qualification or a pre-approval letter, but they still have to go through underwriting and kind of like get fully approved. Like when the house, they've given all their bank statements, they still work at their job, they still have the income, their credit score hasn't decreased any. They paid off what they stated they was going to pay off. So I always check with the lender and be like, hey, sometimes on average, I'll put 21 days. I know she preferred no more than 15 days. That was a preference. So if I want my offer accepted, I'm gonna put the 15 days. But it leaves a risk of my client losing their earnest money if they're not fully approved by their lender by the 16th day. So they could lose. So say we're 20 days from closing and they went out and bought some furniture, or somebody hacked their credit and they no longer qualify for the loan. Their debt to income ratio was pushed to the limit and they're no longer qualified for the loan. So if that was on day 20, then they could lose their earnest money, that $4,300. So it's very important to talk to the lender about 10 days, day 12, 13, 14. I'd be like, hey, how are we looking? Do I need to terminate? Are we looking strong? Do I need to ask to extend this financing approval? Sometimes you can ask to extend the financing approval, but in this market, it may or may not happen. But it's to be conscious of this 15 days that all the docs are in, and we don't want to go to day 16 and the lender's telling me that they're not a strong buyer. And right here, this contract is not subject to buyers obtaining buyer approval. But I haven't actually I haven't checked that box. I've always, put 15 days. Sometimes I put in 30 days, 35 days, 40. Yeah, I put 45 days if there was a contingency. But, I would say my average, I'll always put normally 21 days. If it's a 30-day closing, then normally by the 21st day, we should know if the buyer can't qualify to buy this house. But even though she did say 15 in that suggestion, sometimes I'll still put 17 or 8 just to get a couple more days. But if I feel like it's going to risk my client's offer being accepted, then I'll put what they say. If you're going FHA or VA, the house has to meet appraisal value, so it cannot appraise for less than. So if you're buying it for $430,000, but I mean, you can't put $430 for FHA in Harris County because the limit is $420. So it'd be $420, $680. And then your clients, even though if your client is doing an FHA purchase, they can still buy a house that's 430,000. They just got to come up with the difference. And the same thing with VA. VA, even if it doesn't appraise for the purchase price, they can pay the difference. But if you don't want to pay the difference, then it has to meet the FHA and VA appraisal value guidelines. So you got to ask the seller to reduce the sales price to whatever it appraised for. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they terminate the contract if you don't want to pay the difference. Sometimes they'll decrease the price of the house. But since this is a conventional offer, this is just blank. This is only pertaining to FHA and VA. So then that's when I need to bring up the conventional loan appraisal addendum. All right, any question about the third party financing?
Nope.
Not for me, thank you.
Okay. So quiet, but it's fine. Let me get it up.
No, we here with you, Dion.
Okay. Let me know if I'm going too slow.
No, yeah, like I said, I think this is very good information. I mean, everything that every at least new agent and those who are even seasoned maybe need to switch up some of their practices, especially with the market changing the way that it is. So I think your pace as well.
Yes, thank you, Dion. Great pace.
Thank you. Next up are the HOA. All right, autofill. All right, name of association. That'll be found here, management company, H/HOA information. So a Spectrum Association Management. And the phone number. What was it? Did it cut off again? It did. Don't mind me.
You got it.
All right. So this is if you're okay, your client is buying a property in a subdivision that has an HOA or POA. And your buyer wants to know what are like the rules and restrictions and what's it called? The CCR covenants and
Yeah.
can't think, yeah, CCR. It just tells you what you can and cannot do inside the community and what you'll be, what you can and cannot do inside the community.
Yeah.
And what they offer. So in some cases, some people would put, they want to know before they, buy the house, they want to know at the seller's expense to deliver the subdivision information to the buyer. And if the seller delivers the subdivision information, buyer may terminate the contract within 3 days after buyer receives the subdivision information or prior to closing. So a lot of sellers necessarily don't like this box because they have to pay for the HOA information delivery, and then it gives the buyer the opportunity to pretty much cancel almost at any time. Because it says within 3 days after buyer receives the subdivision information or prior to closing, whichever comes first, and the earnest money will be refunded to the buyer. So, I've done these back in the day. I just don't do them lately because I know I don't know all the new HOA information. A lot of the information is found online now. They require certain information to be, put online where people can get it at their leisure and decide, you know, if they want to proceed forward with. But a lot of sellers don't like this box being checked because it just gives the buyer opportunity to terminate and get their money back. Now, if the buyer really wants to know, like, hey, I want to know all the details about this subdivision, then the buyer can obtain the information within, sometimes it's 10 days after the effective date. Sometimes who's getting that information is a title company in most cases, and the title company is requesting the information from the subdivision HOA, and they're providing that to you in an email saying, here are all the CCR, the deeds, the restrictions, it'll come in.
Restrictions, all of it.
Yeah, all that will be. But just to shorten this, I normally do put buyer does not require delivery. But let's see, what does she have? Did it already include? Was already in there? Is this hers?
Yeah. I think that's her directions. Yeah, that was.
Oh, so she did include the flood. Remember I said about the flood hazard area? There you go. Special flood hazard area. So I would add that to the document. So it's already signed by the seller. It's just letting you know that, and if you have a listing, and if it's in a flood plain, then you have to have this disclosure so you won't be sued. If their house flood, you're like, oh, the seller didn't tell me that it was in a special flood hazard area. And in most cases, the buyer's lender is are gonna ask for that as well. All right, so you see here, they already have checkbox 4, number check. What was this, Fall Creek? So I'll just go to Fall Creek HOA and see the information there. Sometimes there is a fee. So let me scroll down. So number 4, buyer does not require delivery of the subdivision information. In most cases, there's a transfer fee. And in most cases, most people put $250 to $300. You'll find that information in the listing. And not to say that this is always correct, but they'll have the okay, so right here, she has the transfer fee as being $260, the annual HOA at $1090. And even though the listing agent does have this information here, it's not guaranteed, it's not 100% correct. Sometimes the HOA has went up, and sometimes the mandatory fee, the transfer fee has changed as well. So this is just, and I always tell my clients, like, it may be this, I can't guarantee. We won't know until the title company requests that information. And then there's a fee to obtain the information. So where am I at here? Fees and association. So she put $260. Buyer shall pay any and all association fees, deposits, reserves, and other charges associated with the transfer of the property not to exceed $260. So if there's a $500 transfer fee, then the seller's going to be paying $240 if there was a $500. The buyer would be paying up to not to exceed $260, and the seller would pay any excess. Then here, if the seller authorizes the association to release and provide the subdivision information and any updated resale certificate if requested by the buyer, the title company, or any broker to the sale. If buyer does not require the subdivision information or an updated resale certificate and the title company requires information from the association. So in most cases, if the buyer says they do not require the subdivision information as stated above here, and they don't need an updated resale certificate, then the title company is going to know. They want to know if there's any past dues on the HOA. They want to know what the annual HOAs are. Are there any special assessments or violations of covenants? Sometimes a person can buy a house where the seller has violations and fees for, say, it can be as simple as, leaving your basketball goal in the front of your home, or cutting down a tree that you weren't supposed to cut down, or not cutting your grass. So it's different reasons. And somebody, they may have or they may be past due on their HOAs. Maybe they haven't paid them in 2 years. and they owe $2,000. The title company has to get that information. And sometimes in order for that HOA to release that information, it's a fee. So sometimes the seller will pay for that fee, sometimes the buyer, sometimes that fee will be split. But in this case, I believe what they asked for the buyer to pay for that. Yeah, so she checked buyer. So then I have to inform my buyer, hey, you know, this is, we don't have to submit it like this. We can suggest the seller pay it, but to make our offer competitive, they want the buyer to pay for it. So it can range, sometimes it's free, sometimes it's $30, sometimes it's $75, sometimes it's $500. But I just tell them on average, I've seen it, you know, be like 120. Yeah, that's kind of like the average. I've seen between probably like $75 to $120. That's the average I've seen. Of course, that depends on the HOA. All of them are different, but and sometimes you can call if you want to go ahead, you know, and call the HOA, like how much do y'all, you know, charge to release this information, just to give your client a better understanding of what they're coming up front. And that will be added to your buyer's upfront cost. So I was like, hey, buyer, you know, you got to pay an option fee, you got to pay earnest, you got to pay your appraisal. You also have to pay the release of the HOA information for the title company. They're going to send you a link. You know, you have to pay that, you know, pretty much immediately as soon as you get it. So there's not a delay. So that's just, yeah.
And I think that's important, you know, communication and being able to manage your clients' expectations with that when it comes to money, because that's what they are concerned about. You know, what do I have to come out of pocket, you know, up front? So the more that you know, and the more that you're able to disclose at that time is, you know, better. So there's no surprises. Or like she said, delays.
Definitely.
Quite a bit.
Cause yeah, I'll get a call. They're like, hey, I got this link saying I gotta pay, you know, $85. What's this about?
Right.
I was like, remember when I went over the HOA information about release, and they, you know, you said you want to make your offer competitive, so you'll pay it. So that's that $85, you know, and if they don't move forward with the house, then they just lose it, $85 for the information. All right, and then just have your buyer sign. All right, so that's it for that, for the addendum. What's the HOA third party? Oh,
The conventional finance, let's see. Conventional loan appraisal form.
This one, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I remember with this house, she bought it in 2020 for what, 3 something. Now she's selling it for $425. What she bought? Yeah. So there's a chance. I mean, you got to run comps for your client to make sure that that 430, even though it's listed at 425, it may not appraise for 425. But going conventional and to make your offer sometimes attractive, you can do an addendum concerning the right to terminate due to lender's appraisal. So this is not to be used for FHA or VA. This first one here, waiver. Buyer waives buyer's right to terminate the contract under paragraph 2B of the third-party financing addendum if property approval is not obtained because of the opinion value of the appraisal does not satisfy the lender's underwriting requirements. And if the lender reduces the amount of the loan due to the opinion of value, the cash portion of sales price is increased by the amount and the loan is reduced to the appraisal. So say the house, you're buying it for $430. I gotta say, because you're putting up quite a bit down, but I guess to simplify it, this saying that if you click this, if the house doesn't meet appraisal value, then your buyer's gonna pay the difference. So the lender will reduce the appraised amount, the loan amount, to what it appraised for. And I guess I can use 420. Yeah. Say it appraised for 425. All right. I'm not trying to complicate this, but normally you wouldn't have to worry about it if it didn't appraise for 25 for the loan amount, because if you're putting 10% down, that was at 43,000, and that's already gonna be what, 390 something, I believe. So you're okay there. This is just stating that you're submitting an offer, and if it doesn't meet the appraisal amount, that your buyer is willing to pay the difference. So your buyer is waiving their right to terminate with this. So with a partial waiver, buyer waives right to terminate the contract under paragraph 2B of the third-party financing addendum if the property approval is not obtained because the opinion of value in the appraisal does not satisfy the lender's underwriting requirements. So it doesn't meet the lender's opinion of the value of the home. So you're stating that you're going to, let's say it's 430. So if it appraises for 430 or more, I'm trying to do this backwards. The opinion of the value is 430 or more, then you won't terminate. You won't, the buyer's waiving the right to terminate the contract. Oh, like say the opinion is 425. And you have an offer of 430. Then if it appraises for their list price of 425, then you're waiving that right. So if it yeah, it's still 430 or 425. Yeah, then you're gonna waive the right to 425. But say for instance, it appraises at 420. That's a better way of me saying it. The house appraises at 420. You're still gonna buy it at this opinion value of 425. So you'll be waiving the right if it appraises at 425. So whatever amount here that your buyer is comfortable with waiving the termination right, like, hey, if the house appraises at 425, I will still continue, the buyer will still continue buying the house. But if the house appraises at like 420, then the buyer could terminate and get their earnest money back. So sorry for that pause, but yeah, that's what it is.
That's good.
Any questions about that? Yeah, so that's just an opinion, like your client is okay with paying this amount.
Mhm.
And if it appraises for less than this amount, then they have the right to terminate. That's a partial waiver. This one is just a complete waiver. It's like regardless, you're going to be paying.
Praises for.
Yeah. With this one, additional right to terminate. In addition to the buyer's right to terminate under the paragraph 2B of the third-party financing addendum, buyer may terminate the contract within blank days after the effective date if the appraised value according to the appraisal obtained by the buyer's lender is less than, and then you would put that amount. So this is kind of like the third-party financing addendum for FHA and VA. This is kind of like that part for conventional. So you can put, the 21 days, or let's say, I'll say 21 days. The appraised value according to the appraisal obtained by a buyer's lender is less than, so say you and the seller agreed on 425, like that was the list price. You can put that. Or 430, what you're buying it for. And the buyer delivers a copy of the appraisal to the seller. So then if you do select this option, then you have to give them a copy of their appraisal. And if you decide not to move forward, then that seller does have a copy of the appraisal and they can share it with the next person that puts in an offer for the house. But yeah, any questions about this? Sorry if I confused y'all on part 2, but I have to think about that. Sometimes I'll be getting that twisted as well, but it's a partial waiver. It's kind of like in most cases when you're offering more than what the list value is or what the seller thinks the house is worth. And you're saying, well, hey, even I'm offer, $440 for the house, but if the house sells for, appraised for $425, then I'll still purchase the house at $425. But if it appraises at $420, then I have the right to terminate. This is full waiver is that no matter what the house appraises for, the buyer's going to pay the difference. So you got a full waiver of the buyer's right to terminate. You got a partial waiver given a opinion value of the home. And then you have an additional right to terminate.
And so Dion, when do you use
Yes.
this form? Is it only with conventional?
Yeah, with conventional.
Okay, thank you.
Any
Or
other
if
questions?
there's, yeah.
Dion? Go ahead, Dion. Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's just conventional. I'm not sure if you use it for USDA.
No.
But I know it's not for FHA or VA, but
Okay,
yeah.
all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Dion? Let's check the chat. Let me see. I don't think I see anything in the chat. I just switch back to my phone. Nope. Oh, this was good, Dion. I really appreciate you going through this so thoroughly because, like I said before, we can get caught up on a lot of these spots in the contract. So you being able to go through this and us being able to reference it is very valuable. So thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, very welcome. I appreciate everybody, staying on, listening.
Yeah.
Just let me know if you have any questions, and if there's anything that changed that I, might have misspoke on, let me know. But
Yeah.
I think I went through everything thoroughly. And
Yeah, I know that we said, guys, that we're going to go over the condos, but we're getting towards the end of our time. So we will set up a separate training to go over condo contracts, and we'll do this on a continuous basis as well. So if there's no other questions, let me see. I see that we have something in the chat. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're
Gained a lot of
welcome.
useful information. Thank you. Great. All right. Well, we will continue to have trainings like this. If there's no further questions, and we're going to go ahead and end this. Thank you, Geraldine. We appreciate it. I will have this up on YouTube so that you guys can reference it here within a week's time. So if not sooner.
All right. Thank you, Jess.
My
Thank you,
pleasure.
everyone.
Thank you, Dion. All right, Shay. Thank you for doing everything on your end. You can go ahead and end the training.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Shay.
No problem. Bye, y'all.
Bye.